There we are now. I didn't realize there was two buttons to press. I'd pressed the one. And didn't realize I had a second one. I turned it back off trying to put that thing on. All right, we'll get started now. Sorry for the delay. We're happy to have us all here today. We're especially happy to have those that may be online with us at their homes or wherever they may be today. And thank everyone that's taken the time to either be here physically or to be with us online. We hope the things we have to talk about today will be beneficial to us. As you may know, we are in the book of Genesis, chapter 19 is where we'll be. And so we hope that, and this is about the doom of Sodom, is where we are. And we hope to get through with this today. And hopefully we can even get into chapter 20, but I'm not sure. But as far as some announcements, and again, we try to spend a few minutes on this, especially for those that may be at home and don't have our sheets that we have here at the building. But as far as our members that may be in a hospital or at home, where they may be, Lorraine Buchanan had good news from her heart cath this past week, and Billy Glenn's home and will have dialysis 3 times a week. And Jenny, his wife, Jenny Glenn, is now home and continue to recover from hip surgery, and she's doing rehab. Friends and family, Charles Anthony, Stevie Barnes, Betty Brinyard, Mary Ellison, David Hendricks, Bob Hubbard, Ernest Jordan, Mark Langston, Andy Marshall, Danny Mills, Anita Nix, Jesse Parham, Bill Rager, and Camille Winkler are those that are under our friends and family. So please remember these and help them in our prayers, hopefully, and maybe perhaps cards or talking to them on the phone or something. This evening we'll have our groups, our Connect group, and as you can see, there'll be one available at the Marlowe's home, and there's the address, the Terry home address, and Alan and Cindy Middleton. Also the campus house, and Albert Patterson and Jordan Alker will have a group there. As far as our homebound, Brenda Baxter, Horace and Mary Alice Conway, Jerry Koss, Johnny Garrison, Billy Glenn, Joe Latham, Faye Latham, Brandon Ligon, Darlene Pugh, Faye Rice, LaBelle Stiers, Jimmy Sullivan, Jackie Swift, and Dan Whitstone. So please remember those. There are addresses there too if anyone has the opportunity or would like to send them a card. I know they would appreciate it. Yeah, also, our upcoming events, the men will have a men's retreat April 1st and 2nd. And then annual egg hunt will be the 3rd. Lads to Leaders will be April 15th and 17th, and we'll be going to Nashville for that. So please remember our children as they go up there, they'll have a safe time. Also, we're happy to announce that you're invited to a baby shower. The ladies are honoring Suzanne Fife Sunday, April the 10th in the annex from 3 to 4:30. So please remember that. On our back sheet for birthdays, today's the 27th. Shirley Lawler's having a birthday. Tomorrow, Angie Lyle is having one. And that's the 2 for this week. So we want to wish them a happy birthday and that they'll have a good time. And I know whether we're at our age or what, we really deep down inside probably would like somebody to say happy birthday to us on our birthday. So if you get the opportunity to do that, especially when there's children involved, I know they always like it. If there's no other announcement or anything, let's bow. We'll go to our Father in heaven. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this wonderful day, the beauty of it we see, the coolness in the air, the sunshine as it shines on us, and the air that we breathe. We're so thankful for all these things. We know that because of you that we have these, not only to sustain our own lives, but also, Father, to show us the power that you have. And we appreciate so much what you give us. Father, those that we mention here that are sick, please be with each one of them and their families. Comfort all of them that the best way that can be done so they can realize that they can hopefully have their health back like they would like to have, and bless them in that way. Please be with your church as we want to remember our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine area. Sadly, some of them have lost their lives, and we pray that you'll help those people in that country. Sadly, children have died, and those of all types of ages. Please be with them and in some way use your power to where peace can be for them in their land. Be with us as we live our daily lives. We pray that you'll help each of us to stay as well as we can. Also, that as we go about it, we'll have a safe time as we travel about in our world. Thank you so much for all that you give us, and especially thank you for Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen. All right. Let's get this thing cranked back up. All right. We're going to be looking, Ashley, in a moment at this verse here, but I'd like quickly, if it's all right with you, kind of get us back up to speed on this. So we're going to start, I'm going to read through 15 verses. I start at verse 1. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. And he said, Now, behold, my lords, please turn aside into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet, and when you may rise early and go on your way. They said, however, No, but we shall spend the night in the square. Yet he urged them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. And they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may have relations with them. But Lot went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, Please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. Now behold, I have two daughters who have not had relations with man. Please let me bring them out to you and do to them whatever you like. Only do nothing to these men, inasmuch as they have come under the shelter of my roof. But they said, Stand aside. Furthermore, they said, This one came in as an alien, and already he is acting like a judge. Now we will treat you worse than them. So they pressed hard against Lot and came near to break the door. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck the men who were in the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the doorway. Then the men said to Lot, Whom else have you here? A son-in-law and your sons and your daughters and whomever you have in the city, bring them out of this place. For we are about to destroy this place, because their outcry has become so great before the Lord that the Lord has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, and said, Up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he appeared to his sons-in-law to be jesting. And when morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, Up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be swept away by the punishment of the city. And that's where we are at this time. So now let's look at this next question. It's found in verse 16. The question is this: in verse 16? What did Lot do about what the men said? And this is what he did. He hesitated. He hesitated, and we talked a little bit about this last week. He may have been wanting to go back and try to persuade his future son-in-laws to come. I don't know, but anyway, he hesitated for a moment, or for some time there. Because, if you stop and think for just a moment, the men that have came to him, they had not done any except for striking the men with blindness. Now, up until then, they were just men that he had respect for and was wanting to take care of them and let them spend the night with him. But undoubtedly, you would think that when they struck those men with blindness and they couldn't find the doorway, that he would not have hesitated, but for some reason he did. We'll see a little bit of it probably here in a moment. What did the men then do? What did they then do, and why? What did they do is this. It was the next morning, and they seized his hand, and the hand of his wife, and the hands of his 2 daughters. So here was these men actually there holding their hands in a sense. I guess they were ready to just pull them with them to get them out. They knew what was fixing to happen, and they did not want him and his wife and 2 daughters to be that way. And why did they do that? For the compassion of the Lord was upon him. Even though going back to when he and Abraham stood over on that mount, and looked out and saw the valley, and he looked and saw the lusciousness of one area of the valley, and sadly Lot went that way, but Abraham went the other way. And even from then, the compassion that God had for Abraham is on the same level to a point that he would have for Lot. He wanted Lot to be saved, and so that's why he allowed this to happen. But they were pulling their hands, trying to get them out because God had compassion or care for him, love for him, and so that's why they did that. What did the men do next? They brought him out and put him outside the city. So you can imagine they were holding him. Now, I don't know if they held their hands all the way out or not. We're not told that. But we know initially as they started to leave the area that was the case. And so they brought him out and put him outside the city. After the men brought Lot outside the city, what did one of the men say to him? They got out there, you would think when you get them outside of a city, you say bye, you have a good trip, safe trip, and all this kind of stuff like we would today. But what did he say? Well, be honest with you, this is pretty terrifying if you stop and look at it just for a moment. Escape for your life. Escape for your life. Don't know about you, but that right there should strike fear in someone that if I don't get away from here, I'm going to lose my life. And so that's what the one of the men told him to do in verse 17, to escape for your life. Also, do not look behind you. Do not look behind you. If you remember, that's what he said, don't look behind. Normally and quite often, just like in the New Testament, we have in the New Testament, so the books of the New Testament there are there to tell us the love that God has for us and what he did for mankind, allowing Jesus to come and what Jesus did for us, willing to give his life. But all through the New Testament, we see all the blessings we have, but we still have things that we have to do. And we have to do them correctly, the best way we can, and to be the type of Christian that our Father would want us to be. So we have guidelines for us in the fact that there are things that we need to do to have the blessings of God. Well, the same thing here. It's escape for your life. Do not look behind. Also, do not stay anywhere in the valley. Do not stay anywhere in the valley. And then the men said, escape to the mountains. Quite often, now you and I probably would think of a mountain as being like the Rocky Mountains or something like that. The mountains could have very easily be something along the line and not even as high. I know some of us, maybe almost everyone here has been to Gatlinburg at least once, and as you start to drive in, you see the high hills, and some of it is high enough to be a mountain 1,000, 2,000 feet high. But sometimes when they talk about mountains in the Old Testament, especially when you look at the archaeological finds and so forth like that, a mountain sometimes a big mound or big hill, what in our world we may call a big hill. But either way, whatever it was, he was to escape to a specific type area. So there are guidelines, there are restrictions on what he was supposed to do. Also, here is why to do that, lest you be swept away. Lest you be swept away. Well, that kind of swept away seems like in our world, you would think maybe water sweeping someone away, but that's not what's going to be the case. But this is what they told him. Escape for your life. Do not look behind you. Do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, lest you be swept away. So 4 things there he was told to do. I don't know about you, but if I was told that, I would kind of turn around and take off. Is what I'd do. But in verse 19, Lot said that he could not do something. What was he talking about? And he said, I cannot escape to the mountains. In verse 19 it says, now behold, your servant has found favor in your sight. Quite often, and it's not all the time, Lot. If you remember, Abraham was earlier talking about if you could find so many people, good, righteous people, like 50, 45, down to 20, and 10. But every time he would try to ask to lower a number or negotiate with God, he would in a sense brag on what God could do and so forth like that. And here you have something very similar that Lot is saying to these men, in the fact that your servant has found favor in your sight, is what he has. And you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown me by saving my life. Now, he said all that, and he was thankful. That is his way of saying, I'm thankful for what you have done at this time. But, you always, have you ever done anything you felt as though you might need to say something to someone that might be like a little criticism or something other? So we tend to we start with good things, and then that word but comes in. But, da-da-da. And so in a sense, that's what happens here, is what it does. And then it says, please let me, and then in verse 19 it says, but I cannot escape to the mountains. And he's going to give a reason for that. What did Lot say the disaster would do to him? Now, it did say in 19, it says, but I cannot escape to the mountains, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Now, he had been told that there's going to be a sweeping away. Now, exactly from where they were, from there at Sodom, and the mountains, and I would assume, now I don't know, this is strictly just that the mountains that he was going to go to could have been in view to where he could see them afar off, like maybe several miles away. It may have been 10, 20, 30 miles away. I just have no idea. And so he had just heard that city was going to be swept away. And that may have been the reason that he thought that, because they were going to have to basically walk. They could have taken some of their camels and stuff, I don't know. But what we see is they just walked, is what it was. And so I guess he was afraid to get from A to B before the disaster happened. He could not do it. So he was trying to preserve not only his own life, but that of his family. So it says, overtake me and I die, is what he's talking about there. Disaster could do that. And that's why he was, and in a sense, he was negotiating. He was negotiating a different scenario that he was wanting to have that he felt better at. And that may be, in a sense, a lack of faith. What I mean by that is this. They told him something that looked possibly that he could not do. And so he did not, at that point in time, that was the man, the human side of him, did not believe that he could get to where he needed to get before the destruction occurred. Because the men seemed to be in a hurry because they grabbed their hands and took them out of the city and trying to get them out. So that may be part of the reason there. There was a town near enough for Lot to flee to. Why did he want to go there? And it says because it's small. Now, if you look in verse 20, the town, now we'll see in verse 22, the name of the town is Zoar, Z-O-A-R. And in the Hebrew, that does mean small. So it must have been a little town with not a great population and maybe not very much buildings or whatever it may be. But it was just a small place. But he was hoping to go there. I'm assuming from Sodom to Zoar and then the mountains would be it. And I don't know if it'd be in a straight shot or anything like that, but that's basically what he was talking about here. Lot said that if the man, which was we know as an angel, would let him go there, what would happen? And in verse 20 it says, my life may be spared. And so Lot is, again, here looking at the human side of things. He's looking at the logical side of things and could not see the miraculous side that the angels could do. Again, though, you would think that, and of course now, the Israelites were always at this. How many miracles did the Israelites see? They should have known beyond any reasonable of the doubt that God was always with them. Even when they were in captivity, that he was still with them. All things they saw. And then he saw the blindness being struck. So he says this, my life may be saved, in verse 20. In verse 21, what did a man say to Lot about his request? So he made that request, and what did he say? And it says this, behold, I grant you this request or thing, and some versions use the word thing, also, not to overthrow the town of which you have spoken. So, seems to be as though the whole area, and we'll see in the scripture, that whole valley is basically going to be destroyed. Is what's going to happen. The towns, they've not been able to find those towns. Some people speculate to think they found them before, but to be sure, through archaeology, they haven't been able to do that yet. But anyway, they were going to, whatever calamity was going to happen to all the surrounding area was not going to happen to this small town while Lot was in it, is what that means. Excuse me. Did the man say to Lot that he would take, that he could take his time getting to the town? The answer to that is no. What did the man say about getting to the town? He said to hurry. He said, you better get there quick. And there is a reason. You'll see in our next question. But he told him, no, he couldn't take his time. And secondly, get there as quick as you can, is basically what it was. Why did the man want Lot to get there in a hurry? Why did he want him to get there in a hurry? And it's this, because he could not do anything until Lot arrived there. The destruction of Sodom was predicated basically on Lot getting to Zoar, getting that small town, is what it was. You know, even up until that moment, if the people of Sodom and Gomorrah had at that time came out and told these men, we're repenting, we're sorry, we're not going to do what we've been doing, these acts that we've done that was abomination of God and so forth like that. We're not going to do it anymore. We have repented and we want to be God's followers. If they had done that, they wouldn't have been destroyed. But sadly, their cry was so great that God had heard it and what they were doing, and justice was fixing to be done. But for some reason, it seemed as though this seems to somewhat indicate that there was maybe not a timetable, but there was the angel or the man there needed for him to get there so he'd go ahead and finish what he's supposed to do. What was the name of the town? We've already mentioned that. The name of it is Zoar. And what does it mean? It means small. In my Bible and so forth like that, that's what it means. And so a small town where he could go, and then that town, what he did for Zoar, he actually protected the town of Zoar, their inhabitants from being killed by the moment he got there. What had the sun done as Lot came to Zoar? What had happened? It says the sun had risen over the earth. Now again, from Sodom to Zoar, I don't know how far that would be, but for some reason, this indicates he left at what time of day? If the sun is rising when he gets to Zoar, what did he have to do? He had to go in the dark. So he had to go now it may have taken, because they took him out of the city and sent him off, it may have taken them the rest of that day, night coming, and now as they get to the city of Zoar, it's the next morning. So that may be exactly what happened. But, probably in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah that morning when some of those people got up and they went out of their houses and they saw that sun coming out and they thought, well, here's another day. Here's a pretty day. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's a light wind blowing. It's just a wonderful day. Little did they know what was fixing to happen. Little did they know what was fixing to happen. And that's how we, as Christians, we need to always try to live our life the best we can each day because we just don't know what happens around the corner, if that's the best way to say that. And I always try to be thoughtful for others and taking care of those that we can and helping and living the Christian life that we can, so when we stand before our Father in heaven, we'll be able to hear the wonderful thing He says to welcoming us into heaven. What did the Lord rain down on Sodom and Gomorrah? Now, let's look at verse 24. Then the Lord, now if you'll notice, rained, not rain, just rain. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah, not that, but rained on Sodom and Gomorrah is what it says. So He rained these two things, brimstone and fire. Both of those indicate extreme heat, is what they do. And it would burn, the brimstone would burn in such a way that it would just destroy whatever is around it. And so, and again, when it says rain down, I know we've all probably done this. Had a bucket of water, maybe a gallon or two of water, and for whatever reason there's something right down here on the ground. I know, don't know why you would do this every now and then, but like an ant hill, I guess I wanted to work them to death. You can't outwork an ant, I'll go ahead and tell you that. But if you ever just took that bucket and all of a sudden you just poured the whole thing as quick as you can, and all that water just comes down like that, that's what I imagine happened here. There is a reason He told them, the man told him and his family not to look back. There's a reason for that. And again, when we think back when Noah, when the flood came, to have that much water covering the earth in really a short time, the massiveness of it would have been, probably you couldn't describe it. And I think it's in a sense the same way with the brimstone and fire, bringing judgment on all those people. Now, you might not remember this, but these were two cities. In those cities would have been animals, lambs and goats and cows and probably dogs and, I don't know, dogs, cats, whatever it might be. Very likely could have been some type of gardening areas where they might have been raising things like that, everyday life. Sadly, children. You ever thought about that? There's very likely a fair population of children there. Older children, 10, 12 years old, teenagers. Men and women, young couples, just married, older people. And all these people, in a sense, it probably took longer than that, but can you just imagine coming out of the sky, all that brimstone and fire? Something they'd never seen. But that shows the powerfulness of the Father, and when it comes to His judgment will always be final. It will be just. He showed justice in the fact that there was found 4 people that was righteous in that city: Lot, his wife, and 2 daughters. And they believed what the men said. And then Lot went out trying to tell his sons to be sons-in-laws. And I feel sure there's other people that heard him when he said it. So the people had some inkling of what he was saying. But anyway, there was justice served on those 2 cities. And so now let's look at verse 25. Now what I did here, I just took the verse itself and took out some words, so for emphasis. He overthrew those cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. He overthrew them and destroyed them, and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities. And what grew on the ground. Now, if you stop and think, 2 cities totally wiped away, the valley gone of all the growth and stuff, even the grass, the simplest thing that you could see was gone. It was destroyed. that also lets us know and shows us how much our Father despises and hates sin. You know, the act of sin is what caused the lives of these people to be lost. Lot, his wife, and 2 daughters. The daughters did what their father said, and the wife did, and he took them out. And because God had compassion on them, he saw good in them. Couldn't find 10 in that city that had good in them, but he found 4, and those 4 was allowed to leave. If they had found 9, the city was still being destroyed. And so, even in the world we live in, let's always remember this. Let's always strive to do as good as we can for ourselves, for our families, our friends, our church family, whoever it may be. And so we will not have to be able to see in something like this in our lives. So that's some pretty serious stuff there. Those cities was completely wiped off the face of the earth. And I'm going to assume kind of too, because it said the valley, the area where there are people that might have been, you know, all of them may not have been in the city that day. That may be why the valley was destroyed too. Some of them may have been out doing herds, carrying them around, whatever, we just don't know. But anyway, the valley was destroyed too. And in verse 26, look at verse 26, one of the famous verses, I guess, that we know of in the Bible, that most people know about this. What did Lot's wife do? She looked back. Now let's look. It says that he, because he rained down on them in the city of Gomorrah, brimstone and fire, in 25, and he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all that inhabited of the cities and what grew on the ground. Now this was when they were in the city of Zoar, and so now they're leaving. They're leaving the city of Zoar is what they're doing. But his wife, there's that word, but, his wife, from behind him. Because so Lot was walking in front, the wife and the 2 daughters were back behind him. And for whatever reason, her, I don't know if curiosity, don't know if there was sounds that she could hear back there in all the valley, just don't know. But for whatever reason, she looked back, and we know what happened. She became a pillar of salt, a pillar of salt. And I know some people probably try to think, well, where is she? Well, have you ever tried to put water on salt? It's going to rain over there. Eventually, the pillar where she was rained, and it would have and rightly so, it would have been to where she couldn't be found that way. So she turned into that pillar of salt. And I know we've seen Bible stories of that. So that just tells us that when God tells us to do something, sometimes it may not seem that big of a thing. Do you think it was that big a thing to her, really, when it said not to turn around? I mean, really, the human side of it would be, well, I'm going to look anyway. You know, we're all, usually when something is said we shouldn't do, and it doesn't matter what age you are, what tends to happen? We wind up doing it. I mean, really and truly, we wind up doing it. And that's just us, I guess. I don't know. Still doesn't make it right. But here in this case, when God tells us something to do, let's always strive our best to do it. That's the best thing. Abraham rose early in the morning and went where? Now, at this point in time, in verse 27, we're changing now. What has happened at Sodom and Gomorrah has occurred, and then Lot is now leaving, going to the mountains out of Zoar, is what he's doing. His wife has been turned into salt. So there's only 3 of his family members that are going there. And now we are looking at where not Lot, but Abraham has come back into the Scriptures. So Abraham rose early in the morning and went where? To the place where he had stood before the Lord. You remember earlier when he had stood before him and Lot had been with him? Don't know how long that had been. That may have been months or a few years. I just don't know. But he went back to that very same spot in verse 27. While standing there, Abraham looked where? He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the valley. Now that valley there, the word valley is also, as you can see up here, the word circle. It was a type of valley that was a circular, like the river had went around. It's what it did to some amount right there. And so he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah. And then what did he see in verse 28? What did he see? The smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. Now, this was not like a fire that's almost put out and a little bit of smoke going up. It's like a fire that's burning in a furnace. It's what it is. Now, don't know about you. What do you think perhaps Abraham might have thought at that moment when he could see those cities were burning and all the valley was burning? Do you think he might have remembered about somebody? Lot? Don't you think he probably thought about his nephew, Lot? It's probably what he did at that point in time. Very likely, though, too, he would have thought about the people in those cities and all the life that was lost at that particular time. And then in verse 30, Lot leaves Zoar, and where did he go? He went with him. He went to the mountains. So he was in Zoar, in that area, and so he went to the mountains. And who went with him? His two daughters. Now we're back now to Lot, between verse 30 and verse 38. Why did he leave Zoar? For he was afraid. Where did he and his two daughters stay? They went and hid in a cave in verse 30. He was so scared of what had happened after this that he went and hid in a cave. You know, a cave is used several times in the Old Testament. You know, David hid in a cave because of Saul after him and so forth like that. And we saw earlier about 4 or 5 kings that stayed in a cave, and then it got sealed up, and eventually they were hung, is what it was, during the battle of the 4 kingdoms and the 5 kingdoms, what it was. And so that's what they did. Now, here is a point. If you remember back to Sarai and Abram, when they didn't have children, and when Sarai and God had already told them both that they were going to have a child, and gotten up in age, about 80 to 90 years old in that neighborhood, and so Sarai decided to help God. Well, let's look at this right here. That should be, I misspelled 2. Lot's 2 daughters realized that there were no men for them to have children with. What did they do to make sure they would have children? And if you look in verses 31 to 35, we'll see this. We'll see what they did. And what they did, sadly, they took this upon themselves because they were going up into an area of mountains, in a cave area, and they afterwards, I don't know when they could have done this, but they found out, or maybe they, as they walked away, could tell what was happening in the valley, and there was nobody. They were all gone. All the people have died. And so they made their father drink wine, and each one went into him on separate nights, is what they did. So let's look at 31 to 35. Then the firstborn said to the younger, Our father's old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him, that we may preserve our family through our father. They were trying to do good in the fact of keeping the family going, but they were not doing what God wanted them to do. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know that she laid down or where she arose. And it came about the morning that she had said that she had went in last night. And so in verse 35, so they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she laid down or when she arose. Thus both daughters of Lot were with child by their father. And the firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab, and he's the father of Moabites. Now that is a prominent people and so forth in the Old Testament to this day. And as for the younger, she bore a son and called his name Benjamin, and he is the father of the Ammons to this day. And so there's 2 groups of people that came about because of acts that the daughters did and not following what God wanted them to do. Thank you so much. We'll do chapter 21 next week. We have the sheets out back there if you'd like to get one. So you're welcome to them. Have a good morning and a great day. Thank you very much.